Christy here over at Crafty Christy's Creations, and today we're going to go over how to make a rhinestone decal. So stay tuned for all the fun. Here I've got my templates all set up, and I'm going to start with the body here, and we've got all the different layers here to make the mermacorn. And I've got all my different hot fix beads. So this is going to work the same as the last one we did, and if you missed that, I'll go ahead and link that above. And I'm going to start with the body, and for the body I'm going to do these Crystal AB is the color, and these are the SS10 or 3mm hot fix stones, and these are by Beadsland that I got on Amazon, and I will link to all the supplies. So, all right, so I'm just going to pour some of these beads right here on the design. And then I've got my tool that came with the magic flock, and I'm just going to use that to help me brush these stones into the little holes. And I'm just kind of trying to brush with a nice light hand to just push these into the hole. It works really well.
Do you find this helpful? Make sure you smash that like button and hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any future Silhouette Studio tutorials. Now let's jump back in where we left off.
Okay, I'm just going to brush the extras down to the bottom here. Okay, and then that layer is done. Now let me show you how I'm going to clean these up. I've got a little trick. I have this pan by Recollections. I picked this up at the craft store. Typically, I've been using this when I do embossing powders, and then you would just sprinkle it on your paper over this. And then in the bottom, it has this little opening. This little stopper that comes out, and then you can funnel it back in. So what I'm going to do is kind of the same process. This is just a little mat that I have it on, so I can put this under here. And then what I can do is just scrape all of my rhinestones right into this little bucket. Now that I've got them all in this little bucket, I can go ahead and open the bag back up and then pour them, and then they just funnel right back in. And that is my trick for cleaning up the rhinestones. As you saw in the last video, I had a lot of trouble keeping when I had them left on my work surface. I ended up with a big mess and got rhinestones stuck in everything. So that I'm now going to start cleaning up each color before I move on. I've got all of my rhinestones in position here. And then I went ahead and cut my piece of Hot Fix Transfer. And I cut it nice and large so that it will fit over the entire design, and I have a lot of space over here to be my hinge. That way I can easily put down the next layer on top of this and pull this completely out of the way. And while I'm working, I'm going to go ahead and set down some parchment paper over the design so that way I don't accidentally bump anything while I'm messing with my heat fix. I'm going to peel that off of the backing. Again, this is the heat fix transfer. And then I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I've got plenty of space here on the edges. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull it down on this side. I've got lots of room for a nice hinge. I can go ahead and hinge that and peel the parchment paper off. And it did keep my design nice and free of any problems. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of get any other debris that's on here off. And then what I can do, go ahead and I'm going to, so that way I make sure every single time I do it the same way. I'm going to try to get all of the creases out of this. You only get one shot to lay this down correctly. So I'm just making my hinge nice and getting it all the way up to the edge there. And then I'm just going to take this piece nice and taut straight across. And then I can go ahead and just press these pieces down. And then I'm going to slowly peel up my transfer, and it should take all of the rhinestones with it. And then I'm just going to peel it back so I have lots of room for my next set. And then for the next one, I'm going to go ahead and do the unicorn part of it. So I'm going to match up my top edges. And I want to get those lined up very nice so that it's straight on all the corners. That's our registration mark, is making sure we've got all of the sides the same. And then for that, I am going to pull this over a little bit further. Now I've got lots of room to pull my design, and it's still on the hinge. That way it's nice and far out of the way. For the unicorn part, I am going to use this lemon yellow. Again, these are Beadsland Hot Fix rhinestones, that 10 SS or 3 millimeter. I've only got a couple of holes here, so I'm just going to pour out a small amount. And then we can go ahead and brush those in. And this one really only has a couple of holes that it would almost be easier for me to just hand place these because there's only 4 or 5. All right, I think that's all of them. I'm just gonna pull the extras out of the way. I'm gonna make sure it doesn't seem like there's anything more up top there. Try to get these back on. All right, I'm gonna brush these all the way down to the bottom here. Again, I can use my little tray here to brush all of these off and out of the way. And I don't have a ton. I'm leaving the stopper out of the bottom of this. I don't think it's gonna be a problem. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and dump these back into the right bag. Oh, I put the stopper back in. The stopper kind of blends in because it has an indent in it, so I don't always know if it's in or out. Okay, we'll go ahead and pour these back in. Oh, looks like one jumped. We'll set that aside. All right, and then I'm gonna go ahead and put my parchment back down just in case I have any trouble while I'm getting everything lined up with getting my hinge back in the correct place. I'm gonna have that parchment there so it doesn't pick up anything else. So I'm just gonna slowly bring this over and get all the creases out so it'll line up very nice with the edge. When I've got that in a place that I like, I can go ahead and peel that parchment out of the way. I'm holding this nice and taut so I can just get this right up to the edge. And then once I like that, we're gonna peel this side nice and taut all the way over. I like that, and we'll go ahead and pick those pieces up. All right, and then I can go ahead and peel that transfer back, and now it should pick up both layers. We'll get that pulled back nice and far so it's out of the way. All right, and now we're gonna go ahead and lay down some of our hair colors. Because you can see there's a gap between the unicorn and the head, and that is for the hair. So we've got 3 different colors of hair. All right, and then for the hair colors, I've got a couple of different kind of pinkish purples and then this like multicolor. So I think I'm gonna start with this light pink. And this is called, this is actually called dark pink. So I'm gonna start with this one. And again, I'm just gonna lay some beads out here, lay some rhinestones out there. Bring in my little tool, and again, I'm just gonna brush these in. So lining up these templates on top of each other, when you do it correctly and you get them nice and lined up, none of the other layers underneath, none of those openings are showing because they're covered with, because you've got the same size cut out each time. Only the holes of that layer show, and then the rest of them are covered up. So you don't have to worry about putting the wrong colors in the wrong spots. And then also making sure when you're doing it this way, you know, everything lines up on your transfer sheet because you're using the same transfer sheet, you haven't moved it. That's why we go to all this trouble to layer everything on top while you're building it out, because then nothing should move and everything should be in the exact same place. Got like 2 more holes right here. Try to put stones into. It is a little bit more difficult to see these layers when the holes are layered on top of each other, because then the backing is blue just like the cutouts, so it makes it a little bit more difficult than as putting it on like this clear sheet, because then you've got a difference in colors in the inside of the holes to really tell you where they are. All right, that layer looks good. We'll go ahead and get these beads out, these rhinestones out of the way. And then with pouring it in here, I just have to be careful as I get layered higher and higher. There's a long ways for it to drop, so you just want to make sure that nothing bounces out of this. Get our bag open, and then go ahead and just pour all these in. It's a really nice way to get the cleanup going nice and quick. Okay, so here we go again with that parchment paper over our design. And then I can get this transfer film pushed up nicely all the way to the edge. And then I can go ahead and just, keeping it nice and taut, go ahead and just lay that down. Okay, we can pick this layer up. And it's building out really nice. I'm excited to see the finished product here. This is gonna look great. All right, we'll go ahead and put on our next layer of hair. So again, I'm just gonna line up all of the sides. to make sure we're nice and flush and straight and everything's going to line up nicely. All right, and then for this one, we're going to do these. This is a rainbow is what it's called. Rainbow colored. And again, I don't have to put too many. These are pretty small layers that maybe take, you know, maybe 5 or 10 rhinestones on there, so I don't have to pour out a whole bunch. And then these kind of change color as they get hit by light. So they look kind of green, they have some pink in them, so I thought these would look really neat. It adds to the magic. And then if you're ever worried that your design is not quite lined up, you can leave that parchment paper on there over your entire design. Pull, so I've got my parchment paper down, and really I just need it over my design, and then I can pull this over and make sure everything is lining up nice, and it is. So I know that everything's in the right place. It looks good where it's lined up. And you know, it'll be kind of stuck to your parchment paper, but it will peel up nicely. And you just want to go slow to make sure nothing moves. But I know that that looked good, so I can go ahead and move that parchment paper. I'm going to pull this nice and taut over my design, set it down, and then I'm going to go ahead and pick up that next color. Boy, and that looks so pretty. I really could have probably just done all of the hair colors just in this one color, and it would just give it a lot of different colors. All right, we've got that one done. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the last hair color. Again, we're just lining up those edges. All right, that looks good. And then for this last one, for the hair, I'm doing fuchsia. And these are all the same side beads. I'm using the 10 SS or 3 millimeter, and they're all hot fix, meaning they've got glue on the back of them that will melt them onto the material that you want to stick them on. Alrighty, we'll lay that parchment paper over there again. Pulling this nice and taut, making sure my hinge is nicely right to the edge before I fold over. I like the way that's gonna look. And then I can go ahead and fold that right into the last piece of hair. All right, we got all that picked up. Our unicorn part of our design here is all done, and now it's time to start doing the mermaid part. So this is all, I've got 3 layers for the tail. So this is a pretty extensively layered design here. But it makes it kind of fun and a little bit more unique. The color we're going to do for the top of the tail is Decal. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that, but it looks like kind of a nice ocean blue color. We'll go ahead and just pour some beads on here. Again, none of these are really large areas to cover, so it may be quicker to just hand place some of these rhinestones rather than brushing, but the brushing technique does get a lot more of the holes filled quickly, so we'll see. You'll kind of just have to decide what your preference is. And this one is a little bit difficult too because it's right on the edge. I have a couple of these rhinestones falling off the edge here, which makes it a little bit harder to brush them in. You know, it's kind of that happy medium between not wasting material, but giving yourself enough of a workspace that you can easily brush in all of your rhinestones. And we'll get this hinge lined back up with the edge. Oh, and this one kind of looks like maybe we have a little too much space on the edge there. Everything seems to be pretty well in line, so I'm just going to go ahead and set these down, knowing that there just might, it kind of looks like there's a little bit more space just on this one edge, but everywhere else it looks fine. And the spacing, it might just be kind of an effect that I'm seeing because I'm using different colors, because when you flip it over you can't tell. So I think it's just as you put the different colors down, sometimes they look different and make you think things aren't lined up. All right, we'll go ahead and do our middle piece of the tail. Again, we're going to line up those edges. And if you ever lay down your next layer and some of your holes are showing through from your previous layer, then you may just need to readjust and make sure that everything is lined up correctly. These do have stickiness on them, but they can also kind of move around a little bit, and it's not real difficult for them to kind of get off balance a little bit, especially when you're doing this many layers. All right, now for this layer, we're going to use blue Zycron. And I apologize if I'm pronouncing these names wrong. This one looks a little more kind of like a greenish blue to me. All right, again, we're kind of right on the edge of our design here, so it is a little bit difficult to kind of sit here and brush them without brushing these off the edge. And wanting to be able to kind of reuse some of these, you don't really want to brush them all off the edge of the template here. So we'll just go nice and slow and see what we can do. So everything we're doing right now is, the same process, whether or not you're going to be putting this on your clothing or if you're gonna turn this into a decal. This process is going to be the same. I'm gonna go ahead and cover that up. Those look great. And then for our last bit of the tail, and this one's actually a pretty large section. So I'm just going to get the bottom lined up here on the bottom and on the side. think that looks good. Try to just brush off some of this extra, I don't know what's on there, fuzz. Okay, and this is emerald. Is going to be our last color. And then I'm just going to brush quite a few. Let's pull this off a little further. Also, what I can do if I'm worried about getting anything on here, I can set my parchment on that while I brush my beads in. All right, looks like we got all of them in there. I can go ahead and just brush the rest of these off of my template. We'll bring in my container and clean up our last color of rhinestones. And it moved as I pulled my container out from under it, and a lot of my rhinestones just moved. So now I have to just kind of flip some of these over and put them back in the holes. And these holes are pretty shallow. I mean, they're only the thickness of the material here, which isn't really thick. So it is pretty easy to tap something and move it out of place. You know, they're just kind of barely setting in there. So I just kind of like to lightly touch around and make sure everything is sitting in a hole and that it's kind of sitting in it. And then I want to make sure it's sitting in there flat as well. Not just, you know, I don't want them to be tilted at all because then they're not going to stick well. We got that all fixed up. We'll go ahead and pour our beads back, our rhinestones. I keep wanting to call them beads. Okay, all of those are in place. We can go ahead and peel. This was just barely stuck on there. And we'll just cover up our design down here. And then we'll do this one last time. We'll go ahead and get this put over to the very edge. And then I'm just going to lay it there. It looks like everything's going to be lined up nicely. I can very carefully pull out that piece of parchment. And it doesn't look like anything moved. So that's good. And then I can just go ahead and keep it nice and taut. And then I can pick up our final layer of our myrmecorn. All right, so let's see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 layers on this one. So a lot of layers in this. We'll go ahead, I think we've got them all picked up. We can go ahead and peel these back. All right, now the best part is we can go ahead and keep this template and reuse it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just peel all these layers up and get them out of our way. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is, because we're gonna turn this into a decal, we've got this Bling Anything material, and I picked this up from the Rhinestone World. And what this does is it adds basically more kind of a different type of stickiness to the rhinestone so that you can attach it to more than just your clothing. So if you wanted to attach this to clothing, you would go ahead and use it as it is. and heat this onto your clothing. In order to make this into a decal that you can apply to your car, laptop, any hard surface, you're going to use this Bling Anything material. And what we're going to do is we're going to heat fix the rhinestones onto this material. And I believe it is shiny side up is how we're going to do that. So again, with the hinge method, I can go ahead and just set my Bling Anything material here. I want to have a little outline kind of around all sides. And then I'm going to go ahead and just peel this over and set it on top. And then I'm going to use my little tool here to really kind of scrape down any extra and scrape down using it kind of as a squeegee now to really make sure everything is good and in place. And then we're going to heat set this onto this Bling Anything material so that we're going to turn this into a decal. So I've got that pretty well stuck on there. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and finish cleaning everything up and bring out the heat press, and I'll see you back in a minute. I've got my design here. Let me show you really well what it looks like. You can see all the lovely colors. And so this is the bling material with the shiny side up. This looks pretty dull when you compare it to how shiny this is. I know it's hard to see on camera, but promise this is shiny side up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my parchment paper and I'm just going to sandwich it, sandwich my design in that. And then I've got my heat press. We'll go ahead and set that on there. And I'm doing 130 degrees for 15 seconds. And I'm just going to press that really well. You're going to know if that's the right amount of time and temperature because the glue should melt just ever so slightly around, it should just melt ever so slightly around your design. Boy, and that hot fix just melted right to the parchment paper. So let's see as we go to peel this up. Okay, they're still not quite stuck down. All right, that melted really well. I did not think this parchment paper would melt like that. It almost seems like there's a lot of moisture in there, which seems kind of interesting. Here we go. I can peel that parchment paper off. Most of it. Okay. All right, so I am going to try that again, and I am going to wrap it in my cloth here because when I look at it, when you look up close, I don't know that the glue really melted down, and then when I try to peel off my hot fix tape, well, there it goes. Now some of the rhinestones look like they're kind of stuck down on there. Let's see if I can peel it all off. So you should be able to peel off your hot fix and everything else should stay in place. Oh, one didn't work there. Okay, so if that one didn't work, I'm gonna go ahead and just go ahead and hit it again. We'll do another 15 seconds. And now I'm gonna just sandwich it inside my cloth, which I know will be fine. And then again, we're doing 130 degrees for 15 seconds with some medium to firm pressure. And then some of that glue is just kind of stuck around. That looks like maybe it's a little bit better. When you look at it, you should see a little bit of glue coming out of the hot fix and then kind of adhering to this bling everything. So now let's see what happens this time when I go to peel up the hot fix. So far, everything seems to be peeling nicely, and it seems to be stuck down well. Beautiful. Okay, so I can get rid of that, and now I'm just gonna trim it down. You can see even some of this bling, everything has kind of melted and warped a bit. So now I'm just gonna cut pretty close around my design. And now I can even see a little bit of haloing around the rhinestones. And that little bit of haloing is the glue coming out from behind them. But this seems to have kind of really warped some of this bling everything. So probably should have done just maybe 20 seconds, not another full 15. So like 20 seconds total would probably have been enough. So if you really wanted this hot fix to look really nice and pretty around here, what I would do is just try to cut an outline, take your entire design while it's still kind of in one piece, and I would give it a little offset, and then I would use that offset to cut my hot fix. If you wanted this to, to cut your bling anything, if you wanted this to look really professional looking. The backing of this, once I peel this off of this bling anything material, is actually clear. So you're not going to see this white. This is just kind of for us. It's the backing on here that is makes it that white color. But I am just fussy cutting this and I'm trying to make a somewhat even border all the way around, which is a little bit difficult to do with this design. Okay, so then when you're done, I'm gonna save this design here, but I'll show you with kind of the leftover scraps here. I'm gonna save this. I'm not quite sure where this is gonna go yet, so I'm gonna set that aside. But what you do then with the rest of your hot fix when you're done, with this bling anything, when you're ready to stick it down, you just peel this backing. It's this kind of plasticky backing that's on here. It's a little bit difficult to pick up. It's kind of the same as like your carrier sheet for your HTV. It's got that bit of a hard plasticness to it. And that is where your color is. There we go. So the actual stickiness, this piece, this colored piece is what is your backing, so that goes in the trash. And then this is what's actually the back side of your design here. So you've put your rhinestones on this front, and melted them into that, and then this back part is sticky. Sticky enough that you can set it on something and it may be, I don't know that I would stick it multiple times. I don't know that it would really hold up all that great, but it appears like you could maybe potentially re-stick it. But now I can take my design, once I've peeled this backing off, and I can stick it to any hard surface. Like I said before, you know, you want to make a design for the side of your Cameo or a car decal, any kind of decal like you would with permanent vinyl. You can now stick your rhinestone designs. So that is how you can make a rhinestone design decal using your Silhouette machine. Isn't this the cutest thing you've ever seen? I can't wait to package it up and hand it to my friend's daughter as part of her birthday gift. I think she's really gonna love it.